Hi, this is Jennifer Schmitz with the Schriever Guardian Resiliency Team. With this video, I am going to talk about something we all get to experience: grief and loss. To be honest, for me personally, loss is one of my least favorite things to experience in life, and it has taken me quite some time to develop a working relationship with the loss that I've felt in the past, with the losses that I'm currently feeling, and with loss that I know I will experience in the future. Like all of us, I have experienced many different types of loss. Loss of relationships through death, through growing apart, even through my own choosing not to be around people despite loving them, because I know being around them will only serve to hurt me. I refer to this as unconditional love, but unconditional love from afar. Examples may be divorce or decreasing contact with people you love in your family because they cause you so much harm. It is still a loss of what was good, and it is also a loss of what you had hoped the relationship would have been, but also acknowledging that you have to let what it is go. Like others, I have also experienced loss through growing and through changing or losing jobs, through changing my work identity, and having to develop new ways of thinking about my career. Grieving loss can be a way of ultimately developing peace and acceptance, so that we can ultimately give us a new path toward living in a new way, even when we didn't ask for it. So before we figure out what to do with grief, I feel it is important to understand what it is and why it is helpful. On this slide is the nuts and bolts of the definition of grief. All of this is true, but I like to think of emotions as being like that old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. In this video, I'm going to show you a lot of words and a lot of suggestions, but I'm going to ask you not to lose sight of the fact that your grief is yours and yours alone. It is important to honor how you feel and how you want to digest this new picture, these new emotions, and this new reality you have of the world. But I am still going to give you some words. So, grief is there to help us adjust to a change or loss that has happened in life. I just mentioned digestion, and I would like to go into that with a bit more detail as to why I use that word. When we digest food, we break it down, pull out what we need of the food, get rid of what we don't need, and then ultimately the nutrients of it are absorbed into the cells of our body for energy, and it becomes a part of who we are. My opinion is that grief helps us to do much the same thing through our nervous system. And some would even say through our spiritual beings. We have a logical mind that sorts out the facts, and we adjust action based on those facts. But there is an emotional piece going through a different part of our brain that processes how we feel, both emotionally and physiologically, when we think of or are reminded of the event. If you have ever had treatment for PTSD, you have likely learned much more about this. There is so much written regarding this aspect of mind-body functioning. You can research this information or contact a mental health provider or myself to get additional information. However, it is my belief that grief, like any other so-called symptom I have talked about in other videos, is really trying to help us process on both a logical and emotional level this new world reality. It is helping us digest this new information, and it takes time. Really influenced by multiple factors, largely because of all these things influencing how we look at the world in general, not just loss. This is what makes how you feel and think unique to you. Spiritual beliefs can become important in how we process loss and in general how we make sense of why things happen. In relation to family and culture, let me give you an example. Let's say there is an underlying belief that men don't cry. That could have been a helpful belief at the time you were growing up, but do you need it now? Maybe, maybe not. Is it the right place to cry? Is it the right time to cry? Is what you have always done been helpful? Can you keep the helpful parts of not crying, but give yourself permission to change the less helpful parts? Only you can decide that. Another influence is how grief is managed presently. Grief can take time to process, but it is also important to find balance between what needs to be done in your life to keep going with allowing yourself time to more actively work through your feelings later on. Life does need to move on. Funerals usually happen for people we lose through death, but some other ceremonies can happen for other life events such as retirements or goodbye parties. Sometimes these are very helpful times to work on coming to terms with the new change we are experiencing in life. Sometimes it can even be helpful to speak your truth or emote about the situation. I believe that is largely what they are designed to do. However, not everyone feels comfortable participating in this way. Sometimes we may feel too numb as it may be too soon. Largely, I believe private individual rituals you may develop to say goodbye can also be just as helpful, if not more helpful, in the long run. Emotional and physical reactions can be highly personal. We don't all experience grief the same way, so it's important not to judge how you or others react. Everybody gets to do it their own way. Having said that, though, there are some common reactions that we might experience. Shock gives you a moment to process information. Anger gives you a chance to fight. It can give you a voice as well as energy to do something about the situation. Guilt. Guilt is usually related to wanting to have had some kind of control over the situation and having a hard time coming to terms that you did not have control of the situation. But we'll get into that a bit more in a minute. Sadness. Sadness is an acknowledgement of change. You're basically beginning to synthesize and digest that this loss has happened. Numbness. Numbness, if it comes and goes, can be very helpful up to a point, as it allows you to get some of the other things in your life done that you have to get done. It is not in and of itself bad. However, if you are stuck in numbness and the numbness begins to generalize to other parts of life, it may be an indicator that you need assistance to get unstuck. Assistance could be a friend, a spiritual leader, a therapist, or even a podcast that starts to help you feel your feelings. As far as physical symptoms, well, there is no way around it. Strong emotions can be very draining. They take a lot of energy. Therefore, fatigue is common. It is important to be kind to yourself and set expectations a bit lower. It's kind of like having the flu. Your body and mind need to have the ability and time to work through the loss and recover. Appetite and sleep changes. The brain is impacted by chemicals that emotions trigger and vice versa. So it is important to do your best to stick to a schedule for sleep as much as you can and make sure that you're eating somewhat healthy foods a couple times a day so as not to worsen the symptoms. This is a whole other lecture that I cover in other videos, but for now, I'm just going to ask you to take my word for it. Restlessness. Again, your body can be either shut down as in deep sorrow or keyed up due to feeling a need to do something to avoid feeling stuck and various chemicals that could impact it. This is normal, but if it becomes problematic, it may be time to talk to a professional. In the case of suicide, given that we may not know exactly why the person opted to choose suicide, we may want to fill in the blank as to why. It is human nature, and we are trying to figure out what happened so we can prevent it in the future or know how to view or think about that person. Not knowing is confusing and makes the job of making sense of the world that much harder. We may fill in the blank with thoughts that could lead us to being angry with the person. You might say things to yourself such as, he or she was so selfish and they didn't think about who he or she is leaving behind or how it's going to impact other people. How could he do that? It could also lead to fear for yourself. You might say something like, if he could do that and I thought he was strong, what does that mean about me? Should I be worried other people may do this too? Should I not get close to people? It can also lead to anger and guilt directed toward yourself. Often, if we don't understand why something happens, we will fill in the blank with the cause being something we did. So for example, you might be saying to yourself, I was going to call, but I didn't. I didn't have time to stop and talk. I didn't ask the right question. If we have guilt, we may be trying to trick ourselves into thinking that we have power. For the most part, we don't have enough power to prevent someone from killing themselves unless they will let us. It is the choice of the individual. Reasons people choose suicide are usually multifactorial, and no one person can address them all. Suicide can also lead to anger towards other people or to situations. And again, you're trying to find a reason. This could lead to difficult things like chronic distress or avoidance of people and being stuck. Or it could lead to actions that will prompt you to do something positive in the world. Say, for example, the person died because they were murdered as a result of domestic violence. So you maybe be angry at the police, the families, and you may be angry at all kinds of people. But you can take that energy and change it into a program to help bring awareness to judicial institutions, or develop an awareness campaign about domestic violence or bullying in school, or veteran and military suicide. You could maybe even use it to lead towards a change in your own organization. It is also common to have anger at not knowing why in and of itself. So here you're looking at being stuck because you don't know why and maintaining that anger, or beginning to utilize what's called radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is the ability to accept situations that are outside your control without judging them, thereby reducing suffering. The why is above your pay grade, and it is okay not to know and still say goodbye. So is suicide preventable? Well, not always. Depression is a medical condition, and sometimes, like cancer, it can be terminal. Even the best doctors, friends, and support cannot always stop it. It is okay to be angry at the person. Absolutely. This would be natural, as this person's actions caused us pain. For some people, it can be an important part of working through things by allowing themselves to express their anger, either privately or in a safe environment. With suicide, can you know in advance that someone is thinking of this? Sometimes. You can even take all the right steps, but the person may still choose suicide. Sometimes the person may just be impulsive and you have no advance warning he or she is going to choose suicide. If he or she doesn't share what is really going on, there's really not a lot that you can do to stop it. Expression is a huge part of recovering from loss. It enables you to think through how this event has changed your view of the world and yourself. It may take time to work through thoughts and emotions to get to the point you can think of loss and feel acceptance, but it is important to work toward that end. Some people can do this with others, one-on-one, by themselves, or in groups. Some people choose expression through creative arts. You can talk to peers, friends, chaplain, therapist, and family. As far as funerals, funerals are that way to say goodbye or grieve with the support of others. Grieving can also be done in private. So there are many different ways to say goodbye or grieve privately. One possibility is to talk to the person who died. You may have different spiritual beliefs related to what happens after we die, but the expression of that grief and to them can be very cathartic. I encourage people to think of the intangible gifts that knowing that person has left with you in your heart and in your character. Example could be that they were able to teach you regarding the best way to be supportive to other people, or letting you know that you are worth being loved, or whatever lessons or gifts this individual has given you that you will carry forward in your life. Thank them for the gift. Identify what are the intangible gifts that you gave to that person that you lost. It could be support, friendship, or humor. But it is important to recognize that we also give gifts to other people. Journaling is another method for grieving. It could be eloquent, it could be very angry, it could be free association, whatever works for you. You may do a private ceremony such as planting a tree, drinking a toast, maybe go to a place the person liked to say goodbye to that person. Physical exercise or angry exercise can also be cathartic if you are angry at the person, the situation, or the world. Often it helps to talk to the person while you are engaged in this exercise, and this can help you express your feelings on a different physiological level. You also might think about what was important about this person or this loss, and develop a private ceremony to say goodbye in honor of whatever that loss may be. Balance is very important. So there are times that you will need to distract yourself or put aside the grief in order to ensure that you are able to function in life. I do not recommend putting it away permanently, as usually unexpressed grief will leak out in different ways. But timing and balance is important. It needs to be done at a pace that is good for you. Distracting can enable you to keep your job and do the mission. Distracting can enable you to be there for your family. And distracting can provide good self-care for you so that you are able to maintain in your life. Technically, anything you do too much to the exclusion of processing through grief can cause you to get stuck. Despite these helpful and less helpful categories on the slide, everything on this page could be done too much. It can both be considered helpful and harmful if it is out of balance. So again, doing it to the right amount is the key. Many people find friends, families, spiritual beliefs, and organizations are enough to process through a loss. However, if you begin to feel stuck, that could be a time to reach out to a chaplain, a support group, or a counselor. Therapists and support groups and counselors are there to help you when you are feeling stuck. They may help you figure out what the block is in your thinking or feeling that keeps you stuck, and a little bit about what to do about it. They can also help you to see the forest when all you see are trees, specifically if you're stuck in guilt, anger, or sadness. And they can also help stimulate some ideas for processing grief, as well as figuring out coping strategies that work for you. Grief for the same event will come and go over time. Each time it pops up, you end up processing it on a deeper level. This is normal, and it promotes growth and resilience. The goal overall is for grief to promote more insight and for you to become stronger and more resilient as you face the future. So it does require some amount of time and patience. And my recommendation is that you continue to give yourself some amount of self-care. Allow this new synthesis of information to help you build new relationships with the continued appreciation for the relationships you've had in the past. And then continuing to find gratitude for the time we have had with our loved ones in the past and the loved ones that we have presently and will have in the future. So for final thoughts, just keep in mind that healing is a journey and everyone's path is unique. So again, I am Jennifer Schmitz with the Schriever Guardian Resiliency Team. We're located at Benny's, or you can reach out to your local chaplains, NFLACS, or mental health clinic. Again, if you have any thoughts, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to me or reach out to your local mental health provider. Thank you, and see you in the next video.